that's a very, so you've very neatly summarised the book and the 7 points. We should say that that's then followed with 100 sort of delicious recipes, which are also, and I hope you won't mind me saying, very sort of simple, very easy to kind of deal with and grapple with.
Most of them are, yeah.
Just to kind of stick on the mindful eating point, which, as you say, mindfulness is a bit of a buzzword. In a way, we need more words for it because it's associated with too many things. But when you're talking about eating, one of our diets have obviously changed hugely, but how do you feel that the way we eat and how we eat has sort of negatively changed alongside kind of modern day living?
That's a very good question. And it is useful to have a few synonyms for mindfulness. And actually in India, where I spent a certain amount of time in the last few years, they talk about conscious eating and unconscious eating. And we could talk about mindful and mindless eating. And we do a lot of mindless eating, as a society, chomping on a chocolate bar or munching our way through a bag of crisps. While doing something else, while driving or watching TV or working at our desks. And so the idea of mindful eating or conscious eating is, as I've said, to be with our food and to think about it and bring our minds to it. And one time I feel you can definitely do that is round a table with other people, even when you're talking. You never need to be too far away from your food. But if you're working or driving, or then it seems to me you are more distracted, or watching TV or whatever. So the conviviality and switching in and out of the conversation and coming back to your food, for me, feels like a very good way to be with your food and be in company.
I'm really interested to hear you say that, because I feel like I've been sort of lucky enough to be in a place once where kind of mindful eating was something they were really emphasizing. But I found that when I came back and was surrounded by people, I lost the ability. It was one of those things you needed to do in quiet, kind of on your own. So you think that you can combine a mindful approach to eating, to slowly appreciating your food while you're surrounded by the buzz of people?
Well, I think you can do it if it's not the only way you eat. And actually, most of us these days do and will do quite a lot of our eating on our own. Whether it's, I don't have much of a social breakfast at home. We get our breakfast at different times and go our different ways. And for reasons which we might come on to, I quite often skip breakfast anyway. I quite like to have that extended period of not eating. So often the first thing I eat in the day, I am on my own, but I will, even if I'm at my desk, I will turn off my computer and I won't be on a phone call. But actually, if it's a nice day, I will often sit outside and just, eat it's often fruit that I eat first thing in the day. So I'll sit outside and eat a piece of fruit, and I can still listen to the birds. It's not like it's total shutdown for all your senses except the sense of taste, but it's being aware that you're eating and relishing your food. And apart from anything else, I mean, this is really, this is quite kind of old school, but if you think about your food, you will chew it a little bit longer. And chewing is important, not just because it releases some enzymes that help pre-digest and make the whole process of digestion and happen very efficiently in a way that's good for our guts. Chewing actually sends messages to your brain. Your brain gets a lot of the information about how much you're eating from how much you're chewing. So if you skip chewing, your brain's getting underinformed about the amount of food that you're eating. This is also why calorie-laden drinks, soft drinks, and the sugary, milky, creamy coffee cocktails that are so popular now, why they can really throw us and actually lead often to weight gain, is because they trick our brains. You're glugging a whole load of calories and nothing's telling your brain that that's happening. So the feeling of fullness, or the message that you're getting to the end of the session, isn't really getting through. Therefore, you can glug a load of that stuff and still have room for lunch.
I think, it's such a fascinating, it feels, it's such simple instructions, and actually your book really reminded me about it. It's amazing how something so simple as just slowing down, and chewing things, thinking about what you're eating, it just changes the experience so much. It makes you able to eat more simply, and you just appreciate one thing. We could talk about, I think, kind of mindful eating for hours. And part of it, though, before we move on, is obviously fasting, or what you call kind of mindful not eating.
Yeah.
So you advocate this is something that works for you, intermittent fasting. It's again not new, but it's something that you've tried and works. Do you think it works for everyone? Do you feel sort of evangelical about it as a practice?
It certainly doesn't work for everybody equally, and I know, and some people really struggle with it. And funny enough, one of the reasons I know that is because I kind of struggle with it too. It's not something I can do every week. That the 5-2 version of it never really worked for me. The idea that I can put aside 2 days, ideally the same 2 days every week, to only have a few hundred calories, or to go 14 or 16 or 18 hours with no food at all. I can't regiment that in my diary, but I do absolutely understand the value of extended periods of not eating. And so I have a much more spontaneous approach to it, depending on what's happening in any given day. And if I've got a desk day when I'm writing, or maybe on the phone a bit, or and I'm at home, then I can often go through till easily kind of midday, and sometimes middle of the afternoon, without having any food. And then I've put in 18 hours sometimes of fasting, and I have got really hungry, but I've sat with it and I've noticed it, and I've thought about that's doing me a power of good. And then I've maybe had a little snack, and then had a good nice supper at the end of the day. And I do that pretty often, but I don't have I couldn't even tell you whether it's how it's not once a week or twice a week. It might be twice a week and then nothing the next week. So I think it's okay to be more spontaneous about these things when the opportunity arises. Now, and also if I've got an active day, if I'm filming or I'm getting up early and I'm going to be outdoors walking, I want some breakfast, no doubt about it. I don't want to be a hungry, hangry, grumpy presenter or whatever I'm doing that day. I want to get a good, lovely bowl of porridge and probably take a couple of apples with me or whatever. I want some, energy inside my body to start that particular day.
It's key, isn't it? Flexibility is really key. I think that comes through a lot.
Well, interesting. I think it is, but some people really like measuring things out in both time and quantities, and I get that. But I still, and there is, for people who want to use these techniques to lose weight, it does work. It's very effective. The 7 ways is a very effective way to lose weight, and you can do it by, if the changes that you're making to do this are for you quite full on, then it's very likely that switching to a much more high fiber diet, brown rice instead of white, whole grain bread, and these things are more, the wholer versions of these foods are more filling, so less of them will fill you up. You may find that slowly and gradually you lose some weight doing that anyway. But if you want to be sure of doing it, there is a meal plan using different recipes spaced out at different times. And some people want that. But I would like, even people who love a meal plan and love a kind of step-by-step approach, I still really want them to understand what's happening and why these things make a difference, and what will be happening in your body that makes this work for you.
So what is happening? Why is fasting something that we should, people should do? What are the benefits?
Well, I'm talking about the whole picture in terms of understanding what's happening. But in what's happening in fasting is that you, as I mentioned, your body, your gut in particular, has a chance to catch up and perform certain rest and repair operations. It's not dealing with the constant assault of processing food. And Michael Mosley has written at great length about this, and very compellingly, and we owe him a great debt. I'm not pretending that we're not standing on the shoulders. Well, he himself would, I hope, be quick to admit that, you know, people like Tim Spector, who we are hearing on the radio talking about COVID a lot of the time at the moment, has done a lot of this key research about our gut health and about how an improved gut biome can help us out. And so extended periods without food allow the gut to complete its operations, to go through the full spectrum of digestion, and allow various rest and various repair activities to occur in key organs of the body. It improves the production of things like serotonin when the gut's functioning really well. And there's a whole interesting area, we're just beginning to glimpse the connections between gut health and mood, because of course lots of the complex chemicals that affect us in different ways, including our moods, are actually synthesized. They may be released in the brain, but they're synthesized in the gut. So things like dopamine and serotonin and GABA, which is short for a very long word, are all created in our gut, and they can all affect our mood. And there are some very strong correlations between a healthy gut and elevated mood and stable mental health. Now, correlation isn't causality, and there's still a lot of work to be done. We don't necessarily know how easy it's going to be to essentially use sort of tweak the gut through, you know, to make the way we look after the gut a medical treatment for certain conditions. But we may be edging tentatively towards that approach. There's some very interesting stuff about, I mean, we're getting quite kind of on the fringes of gut health medicine here, but you may have heard about fecal transplants for people who've got really long-term issues with their guts, and actually taking some gut contents from a healthier person and introducing it to your own gut is starting to be seen as a really quite effective therapy for a number of issues. So we are just scratching the surface here.
I remember they did a film about that on Newsnight. It wasn't a hugely, obviously, you know, pleasant, but incredibly important subject. Do you ever feel we talked at the beginning, and again, obviously, a huge part of the book and the recipes and what you've advocated for years is, you know, we must eat locally, seasonally, organic, wherever possible. But it's something that you can only do if you're a very fortunate few, and so it shouldn't be that way. It's the most simple way to eat, essentially. But we live in a world where actually those sorts of foods are incredibly expensive. They're not that easy to come by, and you know, a lot of people don't have the time to even think about eating that way when they have so much else. It's sort of seen as a much, you know, a much more fortunate or even elitist way of eating.
Yeah, I mean, I totally accept that you know, that we need to address this issue, but I sometimes think that it's I mean, for me, the entry point for healthy eating it's not really financial, but it is a lot to do with having some cooking skills. Now, if you have some basic kitchen skills and you are really willing to and you want to eat healthily, it's really very possible, based on, you know, I'm talking about fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, whole grains, brown rice, things like that. They're not crazily expensive products, these. Of course, there are, you know, if you want to buy a bottle of live organic kombucha from the health food shop, or sauerkraut, that's, you know, it's going to cost you a few quid for a jar that doesn't look too big. But I mean, if you buy a 1 kilo white cabbage, and it doesn't have to be organically grown, you know, the benefits of eating lots of vegetables and high fiber whole foods are not entirely dependent on them being organic. I believe in that system because I'm very concerned that conventional agriculture is depleting the very resource that grows these whole foods for us. So yeah, it matters to me to support that because I can afford it. But it's much more important for your health to eat lots of these foods. And if you're entirely dependent on ready-made meals, processed foods, takeaway foods, it's incredibly hard to eat well. And it's very hard to eat well on a budget. But if you know what to do with carrots and potatoes and rice, and that you can cook them at home, and you're prepared to take a little bit of time to find out how you can also make them really delicious, then you can feed your family on very healthy food fairly inexpensively. Now, I don't claim that that it can be done as cheaply as simply buying the cheapest processed calories you can find. But I also think we have to think about what priorities are, because if we're saving, one of the problems we have is our culture, our retail food culture has made us obsess about the idea of saving money on food. You know, let's save money on food so we can have a really nice car. I mean, I just think that's the wrong way round, and that may be seen as a snooty, elitist thing to say, because I, as it happens, can afford nice food and quite a nice car, although I've got a fairly rubbish car, but there we go. But I honestly think and that's why we come, actually, this probably brings us to the politics of food and how we acquire our food, and how the government does or actually doesn't support us in understanding what healthy food is, doesn't really educate us about healthy food, doesn't equip us at school with the basic skills to create a healthy meal from inexpensive ingredients. Now, if we were getting that right at a cultural and government level, I wouldn't need to write books like this. And one of the things that troubles me as someone who does write books like this is actually really hard for me to reach a lot of people who do think that I am an elitist, and it's very hard for me to get past that perception, much as I've tried in shows like Britain's Fat Fight. I know that's hard, but that's why it's just really important that it's not left to us to solve this problem on our own. It's not, it's not left to the middle classes to fret about these things. We need to raise a generation now that understands what healthy food is, that's equipped to cook well and look after their families and be able to feed themselves and their families well. Because more than ever, we know we've got some problems coming down the line. And if we can do that, if we can feed ourselves, we can cook a bit, then whatever else life throws at us, we have a certain amount of resilience and power and self-sufficiency and self-respect that we get from that.